Welcome back to my podcast. I'm Ian McCormack. I continue my story. Chapter 5. The ambulance turned off the road into the hospital. Finally, I had made it. The driver lifted me into a wheelchair and ran me through to the emergency area. A nurse began to take my blood pressure. As I was sitting there watching the nurse, she looked at the gauge, and then she hit it. I thought, what kind of hospital is this? It was an old World War II army hospital that the British had deserted and given to the Creole people. It looked like it was built in 1945, and had had very little maintenance since then. It was filthy and decrepit, and yet there I was. The nurse hit the gauge again, and I realized there was nothing wrong with the machine. The problem was that my heart wasn't beating strongly enough to register. She ripped off the gauge and rummaged through the cupboard, trying to find another one that looked newer. She pulled one out, slapped it on, opened it up, and started pumping. She looked at me and then looked at the machine. My eyes were open, but I knew she was wondering why they were open. With this kind of blood pressure, your eyes shouldn't be open. I was desperately hanging on. I was hanging on for all I was worth. I was fighting with all my strength to stay alive. So the ambulance driver, realizing the situation was desperate, ripped the gauge off my arm and ran me through to the doctors. 2 Indian doctors were sitting there, both of them half asleep, heads down. One asked in French, "What's your name? Where do you live? How old are you?" He was a young doctor, and he didn't even look at me. I looked over to the older doctor. He had a bit of grey hair, and I thought, he's been around for a few years, he might know how to help me. So I waited. The young doctor stopped talking and looked up. I didn't even bother looking at him, and instead waited for the old man to lift his head up. He looked up. I wasn't sure if I had enough strength left to speak. I locked into his eyes, and I gave him the heaviest look I could muster. I whispered, "I am about to die. I need antitoxins right now." He didn't move. I didn't take my eyes off him. He was just staring straight back into them. The nurse came in with a piece of paper. The older doctor looked at it, looked at me, and jumped. I could see him screw it up in disgust. He pushed the ambulance driver out of the way, grabbed the wheelchair himself, and started racing me down the corridor. I could hear him yelling out something, but all the noise became muffled to me. My senses were beginning to fade. The doctor ran into a room with bottles and medical equipment in it. The next minute I was surrounded by nurses, doctors, and orderlies. At long last, something was happening. A nurse turned my arm over and put in a drip feed. The doctor was up near my face saying, "I don't know if you can hear me, son, but we're going to try and save your life. Keep your eyes open. Come on, son. Fight the poison. Try and keep awake. We're putting dextrose in for dehydration." The doctor was saying to the nurses, "Antitoxins to counteract the poison," in his Oxford English. A nurse jabbed a needle in one side, and another nurse was on the other side, jabbing. I couldn't feel them, but I could see them doing it. Another nurse knelt by my feet, slapping my hand as hard as she could. I was thinking, well, what is she doing? But I didn't care. Just shove the needles in. A nurse behind me was filling a huge syringe, like a horse syringe. She was squeezing the air out of it. She tried to stick it in my arm, but no vein came up. So she lifted my skin, put the needle in, and started pushing the liquid in. It filled up my veins like a small balloon. I could see how nervous she was because the needle was inside the vein, and it looked like it was shaking so much that it would tear my vein open. She left that needle in, and someone passed her another needle. Again, it blew the vein up. The nurse looked at the doctor and asked him, "Another one?" The doctor nodded. So she tried another one. A nurse was now trying to massage it in, but the vein was actually rolling off her thumb. She couldn't get the antitoxin into the blood. It was just not moving. Thanks for listening today. Please stay with me as I take you through that journey, one that's shaped my life. See you tomorrow.